So welcome to day 2. If you're doing this daily, then well done to you. If you are doing this quickly and catching up and trying to cram it all in, that's also good. But I want you to remember that this is not a sprint. It's more of an exercise to, find, your clarity within you. So if you are doing these back to back, please make sure the most important thing is that you are doing the sheets every day. You are filling those sheets out and, getting something down, just disturbing those, those little bits inside your brain. So really important thing, did you fill out the who am I and the goals from yesterday? If you did, then great. If you haven't, then please pause this video, go back, because you'll already see that actually in the portal this morning, it opened up another one. And the one actually before this video was called 10 years ago and 5 years ago. So we're going to go back and have a look at those now. So we're going to go, when I think about going back, I don't want to, the whole point of this is not to go back. The whole point is to start with the end in mind. So therefore, actually, you need to know what and why to, kind of shape what's going forward. Now, let's face it, we've all made a plan and it's not always worked out or gone as we'd hoped it had have done. But guess what? Me too. And we are all creatures of habit. So in the portal today, I want you to, if you haven't already done it, do the 10 years ago today, 10 years ago and the 5 years ago. Now, we've already learned what your plans were then, and, why you're here today. But what I want to know is what you wanted then. I don't want to know this. I want you to have this for yourself. I want to know what you wanted 10 years ago and what your plans were 10 years ago and what you wanted 5 years ago. Now, it is an important day because, we look at tasking ourselves a challenge of just asking ourselves a question. And for some of us, it's quite difficult to kind of look back and just kind of go, well, I wanted to do that, because it can almost kind of, if we haven't achieved what we wanted to, or we set out to do, it can be quite heartbreaking. But this is not a shaming exercise. So I want you to know actually that, some things that you achieved over the last 10 years, over the last 5 years, were probably not on your list. And that's what we're going to explore today. So I don't want you to be upset about it. I just want it to be very there so you can see it on your sheet, okay? Right, so I want to talk to you about my plan, okay? Now my plan is going to be kind of spanned over probably 13 or 14 years, just purely so actually then you've got some context so you can kind of do this for yourself. And I want you to remember that as you're writing this down, none of this is a punishment exercise. Okay, none of this is a punishment exercise. So let me share with you a true story, okay? So I was young, a lot younger than I am now. Say 24, 25, and I so desperately wanted to set up my own business. Yeah, I was in full-time employment. And I was so hungry for it. I just knew that I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to be in complete control of it. And I'm like, if I could just get my own business, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. And I had a really great idea. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to work on that. And I was given every opportunity to, but I want you to look at my surroundings that I had at the time. So you ready? Because you don't always see everything from an inside perspective. It's always from the outside perspective. So it's easier to look back to see what was going on. So my hubby had been really poorly, okay? He'd just been diagnosed with Crohn's disease. We'd literally just secured a mortgage and we'd just had our first boy. So there was a lot going on at that time, so much so. And when I was presented with this business that I could do it from home, and I just wanted to give us security. I thought I can do that to this business. I thought, I'm going to have my own business. I'm going to make sure that we've got the security. I've got the poorly husband, I've got this mortgage that now needs to be paid, I've got a new baby, I've got another child, so I've got 2 children now I need to look after. And it was just over 10 years ago, but I'm just like, you know, I had that opportunity and I'm like, okay, I can have this business. That's it. This is it. This is me. I'm going for it. But what I didn't realize actually is I had another thought at the time. I wanted security. I wanted security from my family. I wanted security knowing that my husband was poorly. I wanted security knowing that we just secured a mortgage. I wanted security because we just had another baby. And, you know, for anybody knows, actually, if you have, you know, if you have full-time employment and then you're, you know, given the opportunity to run your own business and have your own business, then you know, having your own job is, you know, your own business is not an easy thing, especially because you're still working, you know, in your full-time job. So I can tell you that I pushed myself. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. Probably 2-3 years I was doing this for. It was so difficult. You know, I was working on my 5 till 9. That's what we're going to call it. Thank you, Dolly Parton, who actually made a song about it. I was working my 5 till 9 whilst I was still working my 9 till 5, raising a baby, not asking too much of my husband that didn't need any additional stress. And I took the lot. I never knew that I could do so much, honestly. But every day that I worked on my own business, my overriding thought was security. And you know what? What you don't understand actually is that, or I didn't understand at the time, that my security didn't come from having my own job or having my own business. Because everybody knows that when you actually own your own business, there is really no security. So therefore, actually, I had a clash. I so wanted one thing, but my overriding deepest thoughts were with another thing. And really, I mean, I had a clash of needs. I wanted certainty and security, and I couldn't have my own business if I wanted those things. And that is because I wouldn't let myself. Okay, here we go. I was, oh God, honestly, if you could see me at that point, okay, I was working crazy, ridiculous hours. I didn't stop. But there was nothing wrong with me, but my need for the security and the certainty stopped me from pushing myself forward because there was no way I could let go of employment. There you go. And you know what I thought? I thought I was useless. I thought, oh my God, I have everything. I have the opportunity to have this business. I've got time to do it. I'm doing it. Why can't I make this work? And I really thought there was something wrong with me. And then my friends were looking at me going, Paula, you're just killing yourself doing this. What is the point? You're not even making money. You should just give up and just stay in your paid role. You know, it's probably not even good for you anyway. And you know what happened? It wasn't one thing that kind of stopped me from going forward. It was an accumulation of everything. My family and my friends were looking out for me. They really cared for me. They could see that I was working 20-hour days some days. I never had a weekend off. I literally was so stressed. But, you know, I took that knock because I really thought that I couldn't do it. I really thought there was something wrong with me, and there wasn't. I just didn't understand my needs. I didn't understand that, you know, even, you know, with the best will in the world, if you want security and certainty, you can't have that and do something which is so uncertain, like having your own business and that being the only part, you know, chance of employment. So when I kind of let go of that, you know, I did it kind of gracefully and didn't shout about it too much because I actually felt like a failure. God's honest truth. So, but I have to tell you that, you know, a few years later, I still wanted the same thing. I've always only ever wanted my own business. So it got to the point where I went through my third pregnancy and I lost my child in the 8th month of pregnancy. Now that was hard, really, really hard, okay? And then I then went on within the same year, I fell pregnant and had then, which would be my now youngest. And my only overriding thought for that whole time after he was born, okay, was I can't go back to full-time work. Nothing had changed. I still wanted my own business. You see, because actually what we desperately want inside ourselves actually, you know, never really leaves us. But my whole thought process had shifted because of life circumstances. And at that time, I realized I didn't want to be full-time working like that and never seeing my kids, which is all that was actually happening. And I realized, you know, that I don't want to, I almost felt like a bad mother if I was working, and I didn't want that. I didn't want that, you know. And all I did actually when my you know, my middle one now was a baby, all I did was just drop him off at nursery, go to work, come home, bring him back, give him some food, drop him in bed, okay, and then I was working again. I felt like the most terrible mother in the world, like I wasn't giving him anything. But I always believed I needed to work. And that's when it hit. I realized at that point, when my youngest was a baby, I didn't want to go back to work, and I realized that I just wanted to be mum. I wanted to be at home. I wanted to look after my children. I just wanted to be there and love them. I didn't want to go to work, but I knew that I had to pay my mortgage. That's it still, you know, and a lot of us are faced with this dilemma. God, how many of us are faced with this dilemma? So I learned a lot about being at home and understanding how my role fits into the family, because actually for the first time, I took an extended maternity leave. And I'm going to say extended because I didn't go back to work until he was 9 months old. That was the longest I'd ever stayed home on maternity leave. I wanted to see how I fitted in, and could I be that mummy that I hadn't felt like I had been for those previous years. So what I realized is that then we have life stages, and we go through these life stages, and every life stage that we go through, something shifts, something changes, and our needs and what we need from life and what we want from life change. Okay, so I'm going to share something else with you. The reason I share the story is because that power hungry 25-year-old all those years ago was so adamant that she wanted her own business. Okay, she learned how to build a website, and we're talking, oh my gosh, years ago, okay. I learned all about social media posting back then, okay, when it was a lot easier than it is today. I learned all about setting up a business and running it, speaking to people, not being shy, networking, talking. I eventually knew that in my life I would one day be running my own business. Now let's just take a step back for a second. Did I learn anything in those 10 years that helps me now today where I am? Oh my God, I think so. You know, all of those things that I learned whilst I was scrambling to try to do what I wanted to do, I didn't know I had until I tapped into it. But when you learn these things, you don't unlearn them. But back then I had taken time and invested that into myself. When it was possible, I learned those skills that I needed. And yes, I had to update them to bring them into the 21st century, you know. But it was knowledge that I had taken the time to learn and secure, and that I now possessed. It was my knowledge I now had also 5 years ago. And I realized that work isn't everything. All right. Gosh, I was only ever working. Because I tell you what, back then I could work 20 hours a day if I could. I loved working. I loved to please everybody. I loved to just get on and do my work. I loved being needed. I loved helping people. But when you have that point in your life, when you lose a child or something so substantial happens in your life, and I lost a child, and then, you know, very shortly afterwards, I lost my mum, huge mindset shift I had. You know, your whole thought process changes. And I realized at that point that whilst I loved my job, my family came first. And I don't think I saw the 5 years before. Isn't that funny? You know, I learned a lot in that time. So after my youngest was born, I learned to be more at home. I learned how to be a mum. I stopped trying to kind of do the side hustle. I learned where my role sits. Now, strange as that might be, but if you're a working mum or dad, you know, if you are out there working, hustling 20 hours a day, sometimes when you step back into the family role, actually, it's really hard to find your place. You have a title, yeah, your mom or your dad or your aunt or, you know, but what was your place? And I found it hard to find my place. All right, there we go. Now, I didn't understand how to be mum because I'd been out of the family unit for so long, you know, but there was a lot. And the reason I've told you this is because everything that we learn is for a reason. So let's jump to the last couple of years. My husband ended up getting really poorly and was in hospital for months. All right. He's still on the mend now, but we needed to adapt within our, you know, our lives within our new future. You know, our family unit had to once again adapt. I learned how to just be, you know, almost a single mum for a few months. And how to kind of have that balance, you know, to find, you know, if I do everything for myself and for my children. Now, take that back a few years, okay, I would have really struggled because I didn't know how to fit in. But because I'd had that opportunity when my youngest was born and that chance to find where my role fitted in as mum, I felt that I was ready for that opportunity when it presented. And I'm now confident, and we all feel prepared as we kind of just go through that section in our lives. Now, we were ready and we're accepting of that because we understand now that life changes, you know, and you have to be understanding of that. So then, are you ready for this? Then we had the pandemic. And I wonder how many people were affected by this, because guess what? I was. For the first time in my life, I had to stay at home full time with my children. I was never prepared for that. And thank God it happened when I just had a big bout of learning how to be a big single mummy at home all by myself, because I was more prepared for it. Did I enjoy what was going on? No, but was I ready? Yes, I was ready. I was doing homeschooling, I was doing cooking, I was having to learn how to really be mum with nothing else to kind of fall back on. And if you listen to me, if you are working full time and that is your go-to, when you're told that you can't do the thing that has been, you know, instilled in you for 20 years, okay, you have to do something else, that's hard. Now, my husband was also still really poorly. So at this point, we were also shielding when he came out of hospital, and he was only kicked out of hospital so they could free up the ward. You know, he wasn't really ready to come home. So we didn't socialize with anybody outside of our house or family unit for well over a year. Okay, you can have Zoom chats and WhatsApps, but that is not the same. Now, everything that I'd learned over the last 5 years actually helped me to be the person that I was able to be during COVID, during lockdown, during everything else, okay? So I was so damn grateful at that point that I knew why I was there. I didn't feel upset by lockdown. I didn't feel upset by this COVID. I accepted it wholeheartedly. Now, whilst hubby was, you know, just coming out of hospital and I was, you know, sorting out being a full-time mama, then guess what? Redundancy. Yes, yeah, that was it. Okay. Just there was like the cherry on the top. So I was one of millions of people that were also made redundant during COVID. So this is at a time when my husband's health isn't great. We're all in lockdown. The future is completely uncertain. We needed to pay our mortgage. The same story pops up time and time again, but we don't know what is going on. We can't get out to see anyone. And now I don't have a job. Do you know what I did? I took a knock, actually. And to be completely honest with you, it was a huge knock. It affected me in a way that I didn't expect to feel affected. When you've been employed by one company for nearly 17 years straight, and then they just let go of you. And this was quite early on in the pandemic. So if you imagine that we all went into lockdown in March, I was then, you know, released in June. Not even a chance to kind of stay on, have some financial stability, none of that. Now, And what was hard was that, I'd given what I felt like was the best years of my life to this company, and all of a sudden I had nothing back from it. Luckily, I had my family and I learned how to be with my family, and I'd really enjoyed lockdown, But when I took that knock, it was really hard for everybody in our family. Now, I couldn't just go out and get another job because hubby was shielding. I had to look after the children because he still wasn't able to look after them. He wasn't able to work. So things were a little bit fraught in our family for a little while. So I knew that I needed to now have a job where I worked from home. This was my opportunity to now kind of go. And you know what? Now is my time. And with all of that behind me, I looked at everything I'd learned, and guess what? That put me on the trajectory for where I am today. Now that's a lot over the last few years, actually. And if you've not been, if you've been following my journey, then thank you. If not, know that we all go through. Okay, we really do. Okay, but it's once you've seen the worst side of things, can you then see a way forward? So yeah, I took a training course. I decided to invest my redundancy money, which wasn't a lot because I changed my contract 2 years before they made me redundant. Isn't that amazing? It was like it was almost meant to be for them. But I then kind of upskilled my social media side, my website building side, and I just I put that money into myself because I realized actually that I can put my redundancy money in the bank, but it's not going to really do anything. So I invested in myself because I thought this is all I've got. And I thought that now I need to do this because did I have a choice? No. I couldn't go back to employment. I couldn't risk catching COVID. I couldn't leave my husband alone with the children. I couldn't leave the children alone. So as I wrote out my form, my plan for 10 years ago, my plan for 5 years ago, and then, what I was trying to achieve, I know my plan today is to get me where I want to go today. I know that my plan today is to just help me to kind of move forward. And I want you to write down where you were, that what you wanted to do 10 years ago. Okay, I'm going to come back to this story because it's actually quite, for me, it's amazing to kind of see it all fold out the other way around. So I want you to write down what you wanted to do 10 years ago. And then I want you to write down what you wanted to do 5 years ago. And don't look like it was failed, because as from my story you've just seen, it wasn't failed. And just as you've listened to me and understood, you know that whatever you did or didn't achieve or did do or give up something to kind of achieve, get where you went, everything you have done over the last 10 years has put you today where you are. Now, you took something, you grabbed at something, and you knew that this was not the end of your journey, because if it was, you wouldn't be watching this video. So I want you to write down what your plan is after this movie for today, this week, this year. Okay, and I want you to write that down. And then I want you to write what your plan will be in 5 years' time. Now, not in 5 years I will be, I want you to write down as if you're in the moment of in 5 years. Can you close your eyes and see yourself in 5 years? Have a go. Because it's always, you hear the saying that actually if you can see it, you can believe it, you can dream it, you can do it, okay? And that's so true. But if you are so set focused on what you want to have in the future, you can then start to plan how you get there. So the homework sheets are there to prompt you. And then as we go through the rest of the week, you'll see that, what we've done today is then just going to help you go forward. Now, don't write these sheets out in terms of, wanted this, but I didn't achieve it. I just want you to write down what you wanted from 10 years ago, because in a couple of days' time, we're going to come back and visit this story. Okay, so I just want you to know what your plan was, what your plans were, what your plan is today, and where you want to go. That's it. That's the 2 sheets. Okay. Know what you'll be doing in 5 years and making plans from 5 years onwards. Now, you need to concentrate on this. The rest will come. So there are lots of great things to come from this. And it's just to be honest with yourself and know that for every life stage we have, our thoughts and our wants will change, and they need to change. But you'll find a pattern in terms of all of those things, and what you did and the reason that things did happen or didn't happen. And it might be that you wanted something 10 years ago that you're now on that path for, okay? Now, it may or may not have changed. Mine didn't change. It looks slightly different, but it didn't change. But like I said, you're obviously listening to this video for a reason. So if there's still something else that you want, go and get it, because it's all possible to achieve. And all I'm going to ask you to do is just write down and fill out those 2 sheets for today. And that's it. So thank you so much. I've loved being here with you. I've loved having a chat with you and sharing my story. Now I want you to go and put yours down as well. Now tomorrow's called Being Honest. Yep. We look in the mirror tomorrow and we get totally honest. It's not a name, it's not a shaming day by any means. We just get honest. So, like I said, there is a reason that you're here. There's a reason that you want this. So when you write these things down, be honest with yourself and get it on paper. And we'll continue this conversation tomorrow.